Hi everyone, I'm Cosmin, the coach from Web Tennis 24. I would like to share something that I think you will find valuable. I get a lot of emails because of my online presence, mostly from coaches, but I'm sure the tennis players will benefit from this too. I would like to share some of the questions that I receive via email, and obviously I want to give you my my answers too. And like I said, mostly they are just coaches that ask me how to teach certain technical aspects or how to do various drills with groups or private lessons. So I gathered a few questions. There are in total 15. I will try to go through them as quickly as possible, in the same time to provide as much value as I can. By the way, I'm in the Southern California. It's December 2025, so it's at the end of the year. And look at me having short sleeves. I normally live in in Europe, in Romania. By the way, I'm Romanian, and but I was fortunate to visit this place again. I'm in Southern California. I've been here for 2 months, and I decided to take advantage of this beautiful weather, and I'm outside. I grabbed my laptop and I made a selection of a few questions that I received from mostly tennis coaches for the past 2 to 3 months. I wish I kept the questions that I received throughout the day. But let's go ahead and start with this one, and I'm trying to make it a habit every few months to come up with some questions and answers that, again, I hope you're going to find them valuable. So let's go ahead. And so these are questions that I received, and I'm going to read them as they arrived, and I will read my answer too, and sometimes I'm going to elaborate and I'll show you some examples. Because the reason I'm reading what I mean to read my answers is because I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any technical or tactical information that I'm going to provide. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. So this comes from a lady, and she said, when rallying with a student using a Continental grip, so a Continental's grip is also called hammer. You're holding the racket with the edge forward. Basically, this is Continental grip. You use it for every stroke in tennis except the forehand ground stroke. So when rallying with a student using a Continental grip, does that primarily limit you blocking or slice shots without a full take back and follow through? Or can you still simulate a topspin rally with a compact swing? So this particular person wanted to know if me as a coach, when I rally with with a beginner player, do I use the Continental grip or use my regular forehand and backhand grips? I use when rallying with beginning players, and I would say like beginning intermediate players. Also, I use a hammer or Continental grip rallying as a coach, because in this way I send the ball more flat and with a lot less spin. I try to use very little slice and very little topspin, because I want the bounce of the ball to be kind of not taking it off after the bounce. For example, if I'm using my regular semi-western forehand grip, if I'm going to be brushing up on the ball, then the ball will come with topspin and it's going to bounce and take off, and it's very hard for me to control it, especially when playing with beginning players. So yes, I use a hammer or Continental grip when rallying with beginning players as a coach. Next question. Question number 2. I saw a drill on Web Tennis 24. By the way, the Web Tennis 24 is a platform that I have been building courses for coaches mostly, but also for tennis players for the past 10, more like 15 years. Yeah, it's been a while. So anyhow, back to the question. I saw a drill on Web Tennis 24 where players are asked to alternate between short and deep shots on both forehand and backhand. What is the most effective cue to help students control the length? Is it primarily about how much they drive the ball forward, or are there other key technical adjustments? For me, it's simple. Like, for example, at some point I made a drill at Web Tennis 24 where I was on one side and my students were obviously on the other side of the baseline, and I placed a small tennis net. I'm going to look for that particular video to see if I can show you some clips of that. So I placed on my side a small net, one of those nets they have that they use for kids tennis, and that net was like about halfway between my baseline and the net. And I told my students to send the ball so that it bounces in front of the little net and to land beyond the little net. And the cues I use when it comes to depth, if I want my students to hit the ball shorter in the court, I tell them to brush more up to create more topspin. I mean to swing with the racket more upwards instead of more forward. Okay, so if you're going to hit the ball deeper, you're going to swing more penetrating. Imagine you have like 3 balls, 1, 2, 3, and you want to swing with the racket through all those 3 balls. You're going to get more depth like that. But if you want to get more topspin to hit the ball shorter, you imagine if there are 3 balls of the 1, 2, 3. If you would be applying more topspin, you would probably hit only the first and maybe a little bit of the second ball. So the more you brush upwards, the more topspin you create, and the ball will land shorter. But the more you swing forward, like in the example I gave you with 3 balls, the more the contact. I mean, how can I say? Imagine that you're extending that contact. The more you'll hit penetrating and obviously less topspin. Okay, so these are the cues I use. If I want my students to get more topspin and shorter, I tell them to brush more upwards. If I wanted to hit deeper, just to swing more through and to extend that contact. Question number 3. For the ready position before moving to a forehand, backhand, and volley, why is the first step often a step out rather than just turning the body sideways and bending the knees? I've noticed some coaches emphasize this initial step while others focus more on the upper body coil. Yeah, to be honest, I'm actually one of those coaches that I emphasize first turning the shoulders. Okay, let me go ahead and step up. I want to show you something. So hopefully you're going to see me from here. So from ready position, I tell them to, you're not going to see my foot, but my initial preparation is to step out, load the outside foot, and turn the body. So I tell them that the racket should be taken back not with the arms, instead should be taken just by turning and coiling the body. So split, step out, okay, step out, loading the outside foot and turning the shoulders. Okay, so the racket goes back by turning the shoulders. I think this is what answers the questions. Let me see what I told this particular person. I said the first step I teach is the step out, just like I said, which is a combination of turning in the direction of the ball, loading the body on the outside foot, and coiling the upper body. Okay, so these are the first thing you want to do. Split, step out, and as you step out, you turn the body and coil. Coil and load the weight on the outside foot. Outside foot, by the way, is the foot that is closer to the ball. The same on the forehand, on the backhand. If the ball comes to my backhand, by the way, this is my left side. The outside foot is the foot that is closer to the incoming ball. All right, so so it is a unit turn and getting closer to the eventual contact point by stepping in the direction of the incoming ball. All right, so that's what I do. I'm the coach. I'm the kind of coach that I want my students to coil the body as soon as they see the ball. Obviously, they coil the body in the direction that the ball comes. All right, the next question number 4. When assisting with the loop swing path, okay, I'm going to explain. I'm going to show you what that means. Where the coach holds the racket, okay, doesn't matter. Maybe I'm going to show you the image or a clip while I talk. So let me read this question again. When assisting with the loop swing path drill, where the coach holds the racket, doesn't matter whether the racket head or the handle is facing the player. Does this affect how the player perceives and learns the swing pattern? Yeah, so basically, let me show you something. This coach asked me, like, for example, when I teach the loop, this is the loop. So from the ready position, the player turns and the racket goes up and then goes down and then low to high. Okay, the same on the forehand. Racket goes up, goes down. So there's a little bit of a loop over here. That's exactly what they're talking about in this question. And I, as a coach, I'm on this side. By the way, I'm this side and holding the racket, while the player from ready position goes with the racket over, under, and low to high. So in the beginning, I know I made some mistakes. I was holding this the racket this way, so that my student was going over the racket and under before swinging low to high. But sometimes with the little kids, this develops like a too large of a backswing. So that's why if you're a coach, let me come back over here. If you're a coach, you're holding the racket like this. Make sure that the handle of the racket is closer to the player, so that the player who is going to be on this side from ready position, they're going to turn. They don't have to make a too large loop. They just turn, bring the racket a little bit. So we're going to develop like a short backswing, and they go under. So they go over, under, and low to high. Okay, so we want the loop to be short, and the racket should be behind the incoming ball. All right. So yes. So if you're a coach, always point the handle towards the player, especially we're talking about kids, little kids. Next question. What are effective ways to train the player's ability to track the ball and stop shank the racket? I think she meant to stop shank the ball. So shank means like when you hit the ball with the frame, okay? When you catch it with the frame or this way. So what are effective ways to train the player's ability to track the ball and stop shank the ball? I often see people, including me, sometimes shank the racket. Are there specific drills or cues you recommend? Okay, let me see what I responded. I'm not sure I understand correctly, but I think you are talking about shanking the ball. Okay, I should have edited this one. Hitting with the frame. In this case, shanking the ball happens, even in my case, obviously after playing for over 30 years of tennis. So if you hit the ball with the frame, sometimes don't worry, just let it go. And obviously you want to learn from that. It's not fun when you hit the ball with a frame, but this can happen. We've seen even guys like Federer and Nadal hitting the ball with a frame, so it's not a big deal. So that can happen for many reasons. Like for example, I told this person timing is off, so you're hitting the ball too late or too early sometimes. Taking your eyes off the ball. Okay, so yeah, as we see the balls will coming, sometimes we blink. Okay, as silly as that sound, we can blink, or sometimes we tend to look at where we want to send the ball, and we take the eyes off the most important object, which is the ball. All right. Sometimes we get bad ball bounces. Like for example, in my case, like I said, I play most of the time in Europe, and we play on clay courts, and we oftentimes have bad bounces over there. So that can happen. It can be frustrating playing on clay courts with the bad bounces. Sometimes you have a small racket head. Okay, so some players, for example, my racket is 98 square inches. But to be honest, I prefer rackets that are at least 100 square inches. But if you have a racket that is smaller, with a smaller racket head than 100 square inches, that you have to make sure that your timing and your sweet spot. Sweet spot is like where you catch the ball, like in the optimal place on the strings. That you have to be very accurate. So the bigger the racket head, the easier to make contact with the strings. But when you have a smaller head, you might find yourself hitting off center or even with the frame. So yeah, also Western grip. So I see players using a Western grip. By the way, a Western grip is like most of the time, most of the players use the semi-Western grip, where the palm is facing the same direction with the strings, and actually is a little bit more under. But the Western grip is when, I'm sorry, this is what I just said is a semi-Western grip. But the Western grip is when your palm is right under the racket. If you will hold the racket like this, okay, so the palm is under the racket, and because of that, right, as I'm approaching the ball, you see that I don't have too much string to offer to that particular ball. Okay, so if I have a Western grip, then my racket face is more closed, and chances are that I'm going to hit it with the frame. Okay, so ideally you should be using a semi-Western grip where the racket face is more facing forward. Okay, so this would be ideal. But again, if you're using a Western grip where the palm is under the racket like this, I'm not sure if you can see it, then the racket face is going to be closed, and chances are you will hit a lot of balls with the frame. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, so I give her an advice right here. It says one good way to correct shanking the ball is to practice drills where you begin the swing from just behind the contact point, or have a short backswing as possible. Okay, so this is a very good point. So my recommendation is that if you find yourself like shanking the ball a lot, start with drills. Do drills where you start from the contact point. So you got to make sure that your racket face is pointing forward. Okay, it's not down, it's not up. Get the grip that allows your racket to be pointing straight forward, and have somebody toss balls for you and move towards the ball, contact and follow through. Just practice pushing the ball, contact and follow through. Later on, after you get a feel for where the contact should be and how the racket should be angled, that again comes from having the proper grip. Then you can add the racket further back and add a little backswing. But it's very important you understand the contact and check how the racket is facing when you make contact with that particular ball. So if your racket is open or closed, adjust your grip so that the strings are facing straight forward. Okay, so you make sure they have the correct grip. Okay, so I also said in this on this subject, shanking the ball. Also, players use a Western grip on the forehand, which I just mentioned. Have the racket strings point with a Western grip. The racket is pointing downwards. Okay, so because of that, you're going to hit it with the frame. All right, so I hope this answers the question. Number 6, I think this is the next question, is regarding power development. Okay, this is a this is a question that a lot of people ask me about power. I've seen a drill. This is the question. I've seen a drill where you throw the ball and the player hits from a stationary position. What key details should we emphasize to help players generate effortless power? My understanding is that it involves dropping the racket head low, a full body rotation, and upward forward acceleration. Would you agree, or are there other essential elements? All right, so this was my my simple answer. Power in tennis comes from a combination of elements: timing, loose arm, and wrist. By the way, I tell my students often to imagine that their arm is like a cooked spaghetti or like a whip. Okay, so the more relaxed you are, the more power you're going to generate. Also, string tension. The lower the tension, you get more power. The tighter the string is, you will get more control but less power. Also, legs and upper body rotation, that also creates more power. I encourage players to keep a loose grip and relaxed arm. And by the way, as a coach, I tell them that in the beginning, they should not worry too much about hitting the ball out. I mean long. Okay, so I always tell them that the worst error in tennis is hitting the ball in the net. But as long as the ball goes deep, that is fine, because hitting the ball deep, that means that they're relaxed. Just allow them to miss deep. Tell them that it's okay. Like every time my students hit the ball over the net and long, I tell them that was a good miss, because I want them to stay relaxed and send the ball. Even if it goes deeper in the beginning, it's not important to get it in the court, because by hitting the ball deeper, they learn to relax. Okay, so as long as their arm is relaxed, the ball goes over the net. If it goes deep, it's not important. The ball will eventually come down as they develop the feel, and obviously they will learn to put more topspin on those shots. By the way, I hope this is recording. Yes, it's recording. All right, so I was just checking. Next question about the serve contact point in the tennis. In the 10 lesson plans, by the way, this is a tennis course that I have on webtennis24.com. This is a course where I show how I teach all the technical elements from forehand, backhand, serve, return of serve, volley, overhead. So I'm showing in this particular course live lesson how I teach those particular shots. So if you're interested, if you're a coach, check out 10 lesson plans from Web Tennis 24. Anyhow, let's go back to the question. In the 10 lesson plans you mentioned, it should be at the height. Okay, so we're talking about the serve contact point. So in the 10 lesson plans you mentioned, it should be at the height where the player can reach with the racket while standing still. So I'm not going to stretch over here, but imagine you're serving. So when I'm serving, I'm saying that the contact point should be at the height where the player is fully extended with the racket and arm up as high as they can reach. But during the actual, so I'm continuing the question, but during the actual motion from the trophy pose, from here to contact, there's often a jump or leg drive. Okay, so this is the jump question on the serve. Should the contact point actually be slightly higher? I tend to contact too low in my own practice. Do you have any tips to help improve this? So I'm going to read what I answered to this particular person. So we are talking about, okay, so in case this question was too long, she wanted to know if the contact point, because I teach the contact point should be as high as I can reach with my arm extended. And this particular person says that when you reach up, sometimes there's a little jump, so the contact point is obviously a little higher. So I told her, indeed, I teach my players to try to make contact with the ball at the highest point possible. Later on, so this is important, as they learn to bend the knees and push up to create more power, that process of reaching up to meet the ball at the highest point often results in a little jump. Okay, so it is important to mention that the jump is not done intentionally. Instead, it is the result of pushing up to make contact with the ball as high as possible. So in case you're still wondering, should you be jumping when serving? No, you should not constantly jumping. The jump should be done once you learn to bend the knees. So as the ball goes up, you're going to bend the knees. Okay, let me go back a little bit and show you. So as I toss the ball, okay, I bend the knees, and then as I reach up to make contact with the ball as high as I can, that pushing from the legs is going to result in a little jump. Okay, so you're not trying to jump purposefully. Instead, as you bend the knees and push up, you want to get more power, more thrust from the body. That is going to result in a little jump. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. By the way, if you have any comments on this, just feel free to use the space, the comment box under this video, and let me know if you want me to clarify any technical aspects or if you want to add something. All right, next question. In the initial lessons, by the way, I think we're halfway. Thank you for sticking with me. I think it's going to be a long video, 23 minutes. All right, so let's keep moving. In the initial lessons, you introduce the forehand with an open stance for tossed balls rather than a closed stance. However, for the backhand, you begin with a closed stance. Could you elaborate on the reasoning behind this specific approach for building fundamentals? Okay, so open stance, that means the hips are facing the incoming ball. Closed stance, or this is square stance, when I'm kind of sideways with my hips sideways, and closed stance is when I'm almost with my back, or actually with my lower back towards the ball. Okay, so I teach mostly open stance. Okay, just coiling the body and rotating the shot. The same on the back end. Even on the back end, I tell them to load the outside foot and then step in, and then in order to have more freedom as they swing, I tell them to bring the back foot, the back foot and the back leg forward as they swing. In this way, they don't have to twist their upper body and feel uncomfortable. All right, so let me see what answer I give this person. So she wants to know why I'm teaching open stance on the forehand and closed stance on the backhand. So I said, I teach open stance on the forehand because it is a more natural way, and it promotes more hips and shoulders rotation. Exactly. So this is one of the things I like about open stance, that allows your body to turn, to coil and uncoil into the shot, which generates more power and feels a lot better. On a two-handed backhand, because there are two hands on the racket, it is not easy to hit it with an open stance. even though at high levels you're going to see that happening. But like I said, on the backhand, even if you step into the shot, as you swing, you let your back foot come around. Okay, so in this way, you're going to get more freedom, more natural way to anchor the body into the shot. Next question. I've heard another coach discuss the three elements of tennis as feel, control, and power. So feel, control, and power. I noticed in 10 lesson plans, you emphasize technique, consistency, and placement. Would it be accurate to interpret your framework as follows? Technique and consistency collectively build the player's feel for the ball, while control encompasses your concept of placement as well as the ability to manage different spins, e.g. Topspin, flat shots. It seems power is a subsequent phase that may be developed later. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this integration. All right, to keep it simple, I'm just going to read you my answer. Every tennis coach develops their own understanding of the tennis development, which if you're a tennis coach, you should have a progression when you teach somebody the stroke too. Mine are the technique, consistency, accuracy, spin, power, those 5 steps. So I teach technique, and then once they understand the technique, I focus on the consistency. We play all kind of games and drills where I tell them, let's see how many balls you can hit over the net. Okay, so we count. So we rally and we count. 1, 2, 3, 4. If they stop at 4, let's say they hit the ball in the net, then we say, okay, we hit 4. Let's see if we can do 5, and so forth. So technique first, then consistency. Consistency means the ability of being able to hit the ball over the net, over and over, as many times as you can. And then comes placement. So after we learn technique and we are consistent, next we're going to try to place the ball to the right or to the left, or deep or short. Okay. Remember we talked about how do you hit the ball, deep or short. You hit more through the ball, and maybe you brush a little bit more. Even though this comes to the next level, which is the spin. So the fourth one would be spin, the ability to hit the ball with top spin or slice. And the number one on my list is power. Even though it's okay if players hit the ball harder, power is not something that I emphasize. For me, it's more important that players learn technique, consistency in placement, and the spin. All right, so I think I kind of answered that particular question. Moving on to the next question. I find your method let me try again. I find your method of starting strokes, forehand and backhand, from the contact point and follow through very effective. So, which means I start with the racket here. So I teach my students where the contact point is, and I toss some balls, and they just push the ball from here and they follow through. So every stroke for me starts from the contact and the follow through. The same on the backhand side. I teach them the contact and follow through. Okay, these are the most important aspects of every stroke. Being able to understand where the contact should be, like how far back or how far forward, and as a result, seeing how the racket is pointing at contact, you get a feel automatically of your grip, of the proper grip. So by starting from the contact point, I think it's a great way not only to learn where the player should meet the ball, but also to learn how the racket should be pointing, and to get a good feel of the grip. So here's the answer I gave in this regard. I first learned this when I became a certified tennis coach. I'm still a certified tennis coach, by the way. I don't want to mention which organization, because I do not want to advertise any of them. And later I learned from this coach, Oscar Wagner. He's one of the greatest tennis coaches that you can still find a lot of information about him online, who also taught the strokes beginning with the contact point. That's why you see beginner players struggling with the contact point, because they are not taught from the beginning where it should be, more or less. So teaching beginners right from the start at the contact point is my top priority, which makes sense to me as I consider it the most aspect of the technique progression, along with the follow through. By the way, since we are talking about the follow through, the contact point, like I said, it's important to to understand where the ball and the racket should meet, but also the follow through. I always pay attention to how my students finish, because a long follow through shows me a relaxed arm. Remember that we said that a relaxed arm is very, very important when learning to play tennis. So yeah, if I see that after the contact they tend to stop right away, I say no, follow through. Sometimes just by stressing a long finish, naturally they will learn to relax. Okay, so the follow through shows me as a coach that my student's arm is relaxed, and obviously you're going to create more power later on with a longer finish and relaxed arm. Next question: how exactly do you coach players to control the landing spot or placement on their serve? Is it primarily about the racket face angle and direction at contact? Or do you also emphasize the importance of mental imagery, I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, having the students visualize the target in their minds and then achieving consistency through repetitive practice? Sorry, I kind of butchered this question. So basically, this particular person that wants to know how do I teach players to aim their serve in a particular spot inside of the service box. Okay, now this is I'm going to go ahead and read this answer, the one that I give them, just in case. I just don't want to lose any, or to leave any information out. When it comes to placement control, okay, let me see. When it comes to placement control on the serve, I don't think there is any conscious technical advice you can give your student. However, hitting certain spots on the court with your serve or any other stroke in tennis is just a matter of feel, which comes through repetition and constant adjustment. Okay, once the technique is developed, okay, on the serve, I tell my students to look at the spot they want to serve to and just go for it. Then, if the serve was too deep, next to the shot, they adjust by trying to aim shorter. Then adjust to the next one, and so forth until they get a feel of how hard, deep, and how much spin they should be applying to hit certain shots. So again, what I tell my students, I'd say, look at that particular spot. Like for example, I can place a cone, or sometimes I like to place my tennis bag, and I tell them, go ahead and hit my tennis bag. Okay, so I'm not telling them to turn in a certain way. I'm not telling them about the racket angle, because the serve or any stroke in tennis happens so fast, it's very hard to consciously control what you do during that particular swing. So I tell them to take a look at that spot before they serve, or before they hit a forehand or backhand, and just let the body adjust the swing and the motion, so that they achieve the goal of hitting the ball into that particular spot. Okay, so I know this sounds a little bit confusing. So it's just like when somebody learns to shoot. I'm sure that there's certain technical aspects, but sometimes you just aim and just go for that particular shot. If the ball goes deeper, then try to maybe roll the racket a little bit more over the ball in a certain way, or put more spin. So just try to, with every serve, with every shot, try to adjust. If the ball went too deep, then close your racket a little bit. Try to close your racket a little bit at contact, or try to put a little bit more spin. So the way you develop a placement on the serve is based on feel, a lot of repetition and a lot of adjustment with every single serve. Okay, so I don't think personally, I don't think there's a technical or there's a certain technique that a tennis coach can teach somebody to aim certain spots, because if there's a technique, I want to know it, and I'm sure that everybody once they learn that particular technique will be able to hit all the spots during serve. So I personally think that is just about like aiming, shooting, and try to adjusting with every serve. It's based on feel and a lot of repetition, a lot of serves practiced. Okay, so I hope that that answers what I think when it comes to placing and how to develop placement on the serve. It's all about repetition, 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 and feel and adjustment. Next question. We have two more, by the way. Next question. We often see young players when setting up for a volley with the racket out to the side, the set position. So basically when they prepare for the ball to hit a volley, Okay, so this is the set position. So you're in ready position. Okay, so you're in ready position and then set. All right, so you see the ball coming, you get set. Okay, so this is the set position. So we often see young players tend to drop the racket head so it's pointing horizontally rather than keeping it slightly elevated. By the way, if you're a beginner player, this is an important question and answer for you too. So is this typically due to insufficient wrist strength, or are there other common technical root causes? What is the most effective corrective strategy? Should we focus on constant reminder and repetition, or are there specific drills to build the necessary stability? Okay, so I know this was a longer question. That's why I want to tell you what this person means. So basically, as the player, especially beginning players and kids, as they get ready to volley, okay, when they learn, they get the racket set, but they oftentimes collapse the racket, or how can I say, they kind of bend the wrist forward and they wait for the ball with the racket down. Ideally, when I teach the volley, I tell them that they should lock the wrist so that there's a 90-degree angle between the, let me come a little closer, between the forearm and the racket. And because, I mean, a lot of the beginners or earlier kids, they cannot maintain that 90-degree angle and their wrist collapses. So yeah, so the wrist should be locked 90 degree and then obviously punch. The same on the forehand and the backhand. You see, as I prepare for the backhand volley, I have a 90-degree angle between the forearm and the racket and then punch. Now, some beginner players, they don't have strong enough wrist and the racket collapses. So let me see what was my answer. I said, you are correct. The racket head collapsing in the set volley position is mostly due to the lack of strength to maintain that 90-degree angle between the forearm and the racket. You can have your, okay, so here's my advice, and for you too, if you're a beginner player and want to learn the volley the proper way, I say you can have your younger players choke up on the racket neck at the beginning until they become a bit more used to the technique, and then gradually slide the hand down towards the bottom of the grip. Okay, so here's what I mean. In fact, right now I just had I had a lesson with a friend of mine who asked me to teach him the volley, and it's funny that that's exactly how I started him. So I have students start to learn the volley choking up on the racket. Let me see. So you hold it just above. You're holding it by the neck, obviously with a hammer grip, but you're holding a little higher. And I tell them to just catch the ball on the strings. Okay, but as long as they learn to lock the wrist, to keep the racket head up, and there's a forearm, there's a 90-degree angle between the forearm and the racket. So I think that's important. So I teach them to hold the racket with the head pointing up, right? Obviously, string is slightly open, but choking up on the racket, and then after a few minutes, just sliding the hand down towards the top of the grip, and eventually, once I see that they can control the racket by keeping that 90-degree angle between these two, then I have them go all the way to the bottom of the grip. So there's a transition. Start with a small racket and then bigger, longer racket as you become more comfortable with that. I mean, volleying with a hammer grip. Okay. All right. Last question. I've mainly seen demonstrations of the forehand half volley in technical lessons. Does the backhand half volley exist? And if so, are there specific differences in technique compared to the forehand side? Yes, the half volley it's a tough stroke to teach a beginner player. So I usually do that after players have spent at least 2 years just playing regular tennis, learning technique and so forth. Because the half volley is a tough one. It requires some very good timing, good anticipation to where the ball bounces, and a footwork to get to the ball and catch it right as it comes off the ground. It's a stroke that has to do with good racket control. So let me see what answer I give to this particular person. So she wants to know if there's also a backhand half volley, and how do you do that? I mean, there's a backhand half volley, obviously, but she wants to know how do you teach that, because the forehand is already challenging enough. She wants to know how I teach the backhand half volley. This is a tough one to teach, the backhand half volley. Most of the times you start teaching them the two-handed half volley. Yes, so if you teach your student with a two-handed, to hit a two-handed backhand, then when it comes to half volley, you're gonna start them off with a two-handed backhand too. And then as they understand the technique, bending the knees, racket angle, etc., and timing, you can ask them to take the non-dominant hand. Okay, so once they learn the half volley with two hands, you ask them to take the non-dominant hand off and just learn how to separate the hands and push the racket. But often it's not easy, because players who learn a two-handed backhand, is going to be very hard for them to maintain that locked wrist at 90 degree as they push the racket forward through the ball. Okay, so I also said I would not teach a beginner player this half volley. I'm talking about the backhand half volley, or actually the forehand too, until they are comfortable with the volley itself and have a solid footwork and timing foundation. All right, so these are some of the questions that I wanted to share with you. Mostly, as you can see, they were meant for tennis coaches, but tennis players, if you had the patience to watch this long video, I'm sure you got some valuable insight. And I encourage you, if you want to add anything to the information that I provided to these questions, to leave it in the comments below. And if you have further questions for me, just let me know. Again, I'm going to be very active and try to respond all the questions. So feel free to use the comment box after this video, and let's get some interesting conversations. Thank you for watching. And again, my name is Cosmin. My website is webtennis24.com. I have a lot of tennis coaching courses over there, but tennis players can find some great information too. Oh, by the way, if you want to email me with your questions, do it at cosmin@webtennis24.com. Cosmin is spelled Cosmin. In fact, I'm going to leave my email here too. All right, looking forward to hear from you. Thank you for watching all the way through. Bye for now.